Westminster and Holyrood are set for an extraordinary Brexit battle after Nicola Sturgeon's government threatened to align Scotland's laws with EU regulations. The Scottish Parliament has backed a bill, which would give ministers discretionary powers to match Scottish law and environmental standards with those of the EU, despite the UK preparing to leave the Brussels bloc by the end of the year. The plot would also see the establishment of the Environmental Standards Scotland to replace the EU's oversight of environmental law, although the government has controversially excluded climate change policy from the body's remit. During the debate, Constitution Secretary Mike Russell described the bill as a modest measure to align laws and environmental standards. Turning to the prospect of a no-deal Brexit and the UK's current negotiations with the EU, Mr. Russell added, "The people of Scotland did not choose Brexit, they certainly didn't choose this sort of disastrous no-deal Brexit, which is still a real possibility. Nor did they choose the equally bad low deal, which is the only alternative left on the table. That low deal is a painfully thin, job-destroying ideological muddle, which, if imposed in the middle of a global pandemic, the deep recession will cost every one of us dear. It beggars belief that any responsible government would even consider it, still less choose it." Pledging his party's support for the plans, Scottish Labour's Alex Rowley said, "Scottish Labour welcomes the proposal for new environmental governance body Environmental Standards Scotland, but this has to be independent from government. We believe that climate change, individual cases and fiscal measures should all be included in the remit of this body and that exemptions to investigations should be prevented, or at least have to go through primary legislation." He accused the Scottish Conservatives of lining up with Boris Johnson to attack the environmental rights of this Parliament and of the people of Scotland after all parties except for the Scottish Conservatives backed the proposals at stage 1. Tory MSP Dean Lockhart accused the SNP of a power grab, warning it would lead to Scotland becoming a regulatory no-man's land with increased costs for businesses and consumers. He said, following the additional restrictions announced earlier today, the priority for this Parliament must be to protect jobs and livelihoods and rebuild Scotland's economy. Instead, however, we are debating a continuity bill that will do the opposite. Legislation that will impose barriers to trade, increase the cost of doing business and, ultimately, I am afraid it will cost jobs and livelihoods across Scotland.